Today, I'm going to be discussing the food we eat. We are going to take a look at the history of it, how it started, where it may be going, and specifically why we have to be careful when we eat foods that come in packages, boxes, and bags. From the very beginning, our hungry ancestors used instincts to search out foods for their families and communities. They traveled the world looking for it while discovering which plants and animals were good food sources. Fish and shellfish were a hit from the very beginning. Then we learned how to hunt, cook, and discovered vegetables, fruits, and grains. The Lunchable, however, was not yet on the menu. We used to settle colonies and villages based on the availability of food. Then we discovered how to grow our own food and raise and tend to livestock, which meant people could begin to build communities and stopped relying on hunting. Instead, they began herding, planting, and harvesting. In the early days of the 20th century, unless you lived on a farm, which many people did at the time, and you grew your own food, you went to the markets to shop for your food. This was around the time factories and mills began to learn how to make lots of food and package them for the consumer. And over the past 100 years, we have seen many changes to our society, which placed more of an emphasis on convenience and mass production, which had an effect on how and what we ate. As fewer and fewer people continued farming, and as more and more people started driving cars, grocery stores became popular. So instead of growing the food for yourself, you went to the markets to select the foods from the farmers. Also, food scientists started to invent new chemicals and additives that would make foods last longer, taste better, and come already prepared. Many people were now able to do other things with their time. Instead of tending to their gardens, modern luxuries like television changed the way many people wanted to eat their food. TV dinners were also designed to make it easy for working families to sit and eat together after a long day. In addition, television became a very powerful tool to convince consumers which new foods were exciting and promising. Soon, everybody wanted to try the newest foods created. Lots of these new foods were made specifically for families, kids especially, with food science still inventing new chemicals, additives, and brand marketing taking on more aggressive tactics. People in America and Europe started to rely more and more on these new processed foods, and they became part of our birthday parties, holiday celebrations, and other cultural events. By the way, that glass next to the Capri Sun pouch, that's what Capri Sun looks like outside of its pouch. So Capri Suns actually looks really nice in the packaging. Tastes pretty good, but does it look good? Now, out of all these ingredients added to our foods, there is no other ingredient as popular as sugar. It's in everything from foods you would expect to have it, like donuts, cookies, ice cream, to things that might not sound like they would have sugar in it, like barbecue sauce, salad dressing, even dog food. Food companies started to add more and more sugars, fats, and oils to their foods to make them more and more delicious. There is something called a bliss point, which is the total amount of fats, oils, and sugars in a food that scientists can put into a food to make it still enjoyable. They still use that technology and bliss point today. Now, as a result, though, health issues are becoming more and more prevalent. It has a negative impact on your physical health and appearance, and can also impact your mood and energy level. As you get older, it could also impact your ability to fight off disease. Now, people start to get the hint. You are what you eat. So, what's in this food exactly? The United States Food and Drug Administration passed a law making the food companies list all the ingredients in their food packages. Each ingredient is listed by weight. So, in this case, whole grain oats is the heaviest ingredient in this recipe of Lucky Charms. Sounds good, right? Healthy, perhaps? Well, not really. Two of the next three heaviest ingredients are sugar and something called corn syrup. We'll get to that in a little bit. Our food labels also tell a consumer what the nutritional value or how good for you the product is. The key parts I want to focus on are the serving size, calories, and all those percentages is on the right. Let's make some sense of this. First of all, the serving size is what's determined to be a proper portion of the food you're supposed to eat. Now let's take Oreos for example. Mr. Gibson could probably eat about 10 if I wanted to. How many could you eat? Well, when you see the back of this package, they're telling you that a serving size is only 2 cookies. So in other words, 2 cookies have 140 calories. Well, what does that mean? Well, you'd probably have to jog around the block 1 or 2 times to burn off 140 calories. Is it worth it? I don't know. Also, look at the amount of sugars on this food label, 13 grams. Well, what does that mean? That's like taking 4 teaspoons of sugar and just eating it, just for 2 cookies. You want to know something else? If you had 1 can of Coca-Cola, that's like 11 teaspoons of sugar in just 1 can. Whew. Now, in addition, food manufacturers figured out how to add even more sugars into your favorite foods without us even knowing it sometimes. Here are some other sugars that might be on the food label of some of your favorite foods. Now, we know about regular sugar, powdered sugar, brown sugar. There's corn syrup. That's a sugar too. So is maple syrup. There's honey. Molasses is also a sugar. That's something called muscovado sugar. That's agave syrup sugar. And there's that high fructose corn syrup. That's even sweeter than sugar. You gotta be careful with that. Now, what does all that mean? All these sweeteners are added to your food, and what happens is when you eat them, you don't feel full, which makes you eat more and more. That's what it's called. That's why it's called empty calories. You keep putting them in, and you don't get anything out of it. You don't feel full. In fact, you can feel bad. But let's go back to that ingredients list on the box of the Lucky Charms. Remember that? Oh, there it is. Remember when we noticed that both sugar and corn syrup are listed in the top 4 ingredients? Well, I got a question. Why didn't they just make all sugar or all corn syrup as the ingredients? Is it because they wanted to save some money? Because it is cheaper to make corn syrup than it is to have sugar? Maybe. Or what if they took the weight of sugar and then the weight of corn syrup and they put them together? What if that was added up to be more than the whole grain oats? Now, instead of having whole grain oats as your first ingredient on the back of the package, it would say sugar or corn syrup instead. I don't know about your mom or dad or grandma, but mine would never buy me a cereal that had sugar as the heaviest ingredient. So, as Americans and other Western European countries started to get used to these sweet tasting foods, the scientists from these companies started making other chemically produced sweeteners. Some of them have calories, some of them don't. The science on this, though, is not telling us one way or the other if they're good for us. Matter of fact, some scientists say that it's even healthier to have real sugar than these substitutes. And besides, look at these names: sorbitol, mannitol. I can't even pronounce half of them. Bottom line, if you can't pronounce it, maybe you shouldn't eat it. So, What do we do instead? Well, it's a good idea to eat the rainbow. Eat all the different colors. Eat the greens, broccoli, spinach, green beans. Yum! Fruits can be a sweet treat by themselves. Plus, you get the extra vitamins and minerals, plus the fiber. Fiber is good for you for many reasons, especially because it keeps you full. And unlike those sugary cookies and ice creams that keeps you wanting more and more of it, you eat one apple. You've never wanted to eat a second apple after you ate the first apple. That's because you feel full. You know, it's time to stop eating. Just like now, it's time for me to stop talking. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned something new about the food we eat. Thanks for listening to the entire presentation. Goodbye.